Hello students, today we will discuss a previous year question that came in the Business Studies exam held by the Assam Higher Secondary Education Council. So the question is, distinguish between domestic and international trade. So before going to the distinctions, we will have to know what is domestic and international trade. As the name says, domestic trade means buying and selling of goods within the boundaries of a country. And what is international trade? It is the buying and selling of goods beyond the borders of a country. So, international trade is buying and selling of goods or services beyond the borders of the domestic country. And what is domestic trade? It is the buying and selling of goods within the borders of the country itself. So, this is the very basic concept of domestic trade and international trade. So, what are the distinctions? The first point of distinction we have here is the definition. What does the definition says? The definition of domestic trade here is trade that takes place within the boundaries of a country involving buyers and sellers from the same nation. Here, the buyers and sellers, because what happens in trade? Buying and selling of goods and services. So the buyers and the sellers, they remain in the same nation. So this was the definition of domestic trade. It is a trade that takes place within the boundaries of a country involving buyers and sellers from the same nation. International trade, the definition of international trade is, it is a trade that occurs between two or more countries involving the exchange of goods and services across national borders. So just as the buyers and sellers were remain in the same nation in case of domestic trade, however, in case of international trade, the buyers and sellers will be from different countries. So the goods and services are exchanged in or across national borders, and this type of trade is international trade. The next point of distinction is currency used. So the currency used in domestic trade is the same national currency. So in case of India, domestic trade will happen in Indian rupee itself. However, in international trade, because different countries operate in international trade arena, so the currencies will be of different countries as well. So in international trade, it involves foreign currencies and exchange rates. So the main point of distinction here is that in case of domestic trade, the domestic currency is used. However, in international trade, foreign currencies, that is currencies of different countries, are used. The next point of distinction we have is legal formalities. Legal formalities can be all the rules and regulation within a country and across borders, and or all the paperworks needed. So all those things comes under legal formalities. So here, in case of domestic trade, there are fewer and simpler legal procedures. In case of domestic trade, the trader does not have to worry much about the legal procedures. But however, in international trade, the case is different. It requires complex documentation and compliance with international laws. So in case of domestic trade, the legal formalities should be followed. That means the law, the law of the business laws and all those laws concerned with trade has to be followed of the domestic country only. But in case of international trade, international laws has to be followed. So accordingly, the legal formalities also become complex. So in case of domestic trade, legal formalities are fewer and simpler. However, in case of international trade, the legal formalities are complex and they should maintain compliance with different international laws. Now, the next point of distinction we have here is transport cost. The cost of transporting the goods and services. In case of domestic trade, the transport cost is lower because the distances are shorter, because the trade happens within the same country only. That is why the distances become shorter, and accordingly the transport cost also reduces. But in case of international trade, because trading, that is buying and selling of goods, is done in more than one country, the distance also increases. So the transport cost is higher due to long distance shipping and logistics. Because it is international trade, the trading is done in more than one country, so naturally the transport cost is higher in case of international trade. Now, the last point of distinction that we have here is language and culture. Language and culture. So, in case of domestic trade, there is common language and cultural background. So, because the buying and selling of goods happens in the same country itself, so the language and culture of the country is pretty much similar. So the trader or the producer does not have to change much of what kind of a business he does or the communication he has to do with the customers. But in case of international businesses, the language also changes, the culture also changes. So there is differences in languages, customs, and business practices, and business practices may create barriers. So, because the language and culture is different in different countries, so it might create barriers for the international trader. So, these were the points of distinction between domestic and international trade.